Hey everyone, I'm just gonna get Heather on here. Let's see here. All right, let's see.
Hi.
All right, great. I'm gonna get Heather on. Hey
Hello.
friend.
Hi. I've never done one of these before.
Oops, hold on just a second. There we go. I cannot hear you. All
Can you
right,
hear
let's
me?
try this. Yes, yeah, now we're good.
Okay. I can hear you.
Awesome. All right,
Hi.
everyone. Just want to say hello and happy Friday. It's May 5th, and today actually marks International Day of the Midwife. So in honor of that and the history of midwifery, which actually can be traced back to Paleolithic times, about 40,000 BC, and throughout every single culture over all continents, everyone throughout the world, throughout history, has used midwives to care for moms, babies, and families. So right now, currently in the US, we have about 17 to 18,000 midwives. Approximately 1 in 5 of those midwives are certified professional midwives, which is the licensure that Heather and I both have. So today I invited Heather Whitley, CPM, to talk about becoming a midwife and her home birth practice, Sago Lily Midwifery. She practices in Salt Lake City, Utah. And we actually met on Instagram, which is fun to be here and like doing this live, and became good friends and trusted colleagues. So I'm going to let Heather kind of talk. Welcome, Heather. Are you still like with me? Are we? Oh, let's see here. Oops, hold on a second. I think we got disconnected. Let's see here.
Yeah. Hey.
All right.
Sorry.
Oh, gotta love technology, right?
Yeah. I'm here.
All right.
Oh, hey, Michelle. I see Michelle and Stephanie, my two assistants, just hopped on.
Oh,
Sweet. Nice.
nice. That's
Hello.
so great. So I did a little intro. You probably didn't hear it, Heather, but hopefully everyone else did.
I heard a lot of it. I probably just caught
All
missed the
right,
last 30
great.
seconds.
So I kind of wanted to start off and really kind of dive into like why and how most of us become midwives. And I thought it'd be great to interview just a friend and a colleague and
Yeah.
see how she became a midwife. And if, if I remember correctly from us talking in the past, our paths are pretty similar in that, which is probably why we get along, even over a long distance. So, um, yeah, so take some time. Tell us like why you decided to become a midwife. What was that desire that led you to serve women, and what your path was?
Sure. I have 5 children total. My oldest is 23 now. So 23 years ago, I was not even thinking about birth. I was pregnant. I hadn't really put a ton of thought into being a mother. Like it was a surprise kind of pregnancy early in my relationship and marriage. And I was born in the 70s. The report is my mother was on a medication while birthing me called Demerol that they used to give women in the 70s. Um, so I really was unaware of natural birth. And I was around 8 months pregnant with that baby. And I picked up the Bradley method of natural childbirth. And I tell people this is how old I am. I think it was 1999 and my first Amazon purchase ever. And it was so eye opening. I started reading it and I thought it was okay because I was seeing a female OB. That was about as basic as I was thinking ahead. And I started asking her questions. One of them being, how many episiotomies do you do here? And for those of you that don't know, episiotomies are where they kind of cut you fore to aft from vagina to, through your perineum towards your rectum to speed up labor. And she said to me, 95%.
Oh,
So I wasn't even thinking C-section. I was just like, I do not want to be cut during this. I was really afraid. I had some inherent fear all of a sudden at the end of my first pregnancy. So I what happened out of that book is I became a ruthless consumer and started shopping different facilities, different midwives. Home birth was not on my radar. It probably honestly was too fringe in my to think about who I was back then. It just wasn't something I thought about, or maybe would have even not considered for my first one, not knowing what I know now. And I found a group of nurse midwives in another hospital that I really fell in love with. And I had a really great hospital birth, but I did have to fight. It was natural, normal. I had huge babies, all 9, 10 pounders.
Yes, I
And
remember us talking about
yeah,
that we have very similar like
yeah.
size babies. Yeah.
No tearing, no tearing, no episiotomy needed. But it was right after the birth that it was a lot of drama and trauma. And later on, everything in my record was charted as completely normal. But even the retrieval of my placenta, because I wasn't on epidural, I experienced as like a medical. And I remember the words of my midwife saying, "Let go of my arm, I'm getting your placenta." Because I sat up and said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Let go of my arm, I'm getting your placenta." And it was that immediate postpartum that caused me to go to home birth and look at that as an option, even though I didn't know anybody who did it.
Mm-hmm.
And for my next baby 2 years later, and that was life changing because I found a midwife who was offering me the same diagnostics that I was familiar with and comfortable with in the hospital, and wasn't really ready to question yet. Probably she just felt completely competent. It was super highly individualized and professional choice. And that's what started the drumbeat of more women need to know about this. More women need access to this. And that really became the journey. I think by my third pregnancy, I was enrolled in midwifery school in 2005.
That's so amazing. I can't even fathom doing midwifery school or training while pregnant and still having my family. So
Yeah,
that's
it was.
amazing.
Did you do yours after your family was grown?
Yeah, I didn't start until my youngest was 3. I didn't feel like I had the like mental capacity
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to like even bring that on, even though it was like a burning desire for me to start.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the burning desire, I think when it hits is so overwhelming and overpowering. It just like, it was like every cell of my being said, this is the path you need to be on. But it wasn't easy. It wasn't pretty in my family. My kids were great, and my kids growing up around it, I think it really formed who they are as people and how much they had to take care of each other. Eventually, at the end of my journey with it all, I became a single mom of all of them. And they really, raised each other with me when the times I was gone and everything. So, we dealt with it. And, there's probably a little resentment there of me, but, I think they wouldn't, looking back, they know the work is important. They understand it even at a young age. They understand it and me.
Yeah, yeah. So, what path did you take to become a midwife? Because, currently in the United States, we have pretty much 2 really paths that you can do to get licensed. And that would be a certified nurse midwife, certified professional midwives. Some states are now onboarding a direct entry licensed midwife certification, which is great because that actually really helps with the traditional midwife kind of setting.
Mm-hmm.
So what made you decide to do a certified professional midwife and like opposed
Right.
to certified midwifery?
Sure. And I'll preface that by saying I'm in Utah now, which is a really incredible state to be a pregnant woman or a midwife. We have really interesting opportunities and options for both birthing women and midwives, which I can get into later. At the time of my journey of this all, I was in Vermont. So getting the CPM credential, the national credential, was what I wanted to do. In that state, it was either hold a credential and a license or it was a felony. So there wasn't
Ooh.
really, yeah. So, in a lot of states where it's heavily legislated and licensure is offered, that's usually how it goes.
Yeah.
So it's not like that in Utah now, but for me, I knew I wanted the academic piece, the didactic training. So I went to an accredited Midwives College of Utah, which was one of the bigger accredited schools. I don't think that's the only pathway into this. I actually really do champion the apprenticeship model. I really loved the training I got from there. For me as an individual and how I learn, I think that was really great. I think However, I do see value in spending a long clinical period with a practice or a couple practices, and to fill in holes that maybe one's going to get when they're going through an academic program. But I had to do both. I had to go in the field and do, I don't know, 1,400 clinical hours or whatever it totals to sit for that 8-hour CPM exam. And then after that, apply for licensure in my state. So that was my path. I love working with students now, and I've taken students who both are at accredited schools or in what we call the PEP model, the apprenticeship only model. I've actually, the way things have gone with accreditation, I've actually seen a lot, as experienced as I have become, I see a lot of value in the apprenticeship model. I'm not necessarily a champion anymore of the didactic accredited education. I used to be early in my career, and now I don't know. I don't know. I don't poo-poo it, but I'm also don't push people into that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on the individual
Mm-hmm.
and what you're comfortable with, like what you said you were comfortable with at that time.
But and a lifestyle, a lot of us are moms of young children, and the way accreditation has gone, it is micromanaging at what phases students can go through different clinical training and get credit for it, and it has to match their academic phase. And I think if I wouldn't have been able to maybe meet the requirements, and I think of myself as a good midwife now that weren't in place 15 years ago, and I just think they're creating barriers to entry for people that would otherwise be really good birth attendants.
Yeah, because sometimes one of the things that I think is lacking in that didactic sort of environment is what us midwives really rely on the most is building that intuition. And that comes with experience, that comes with working with experienced mentors, sitting and being with women, watching how labor can progress, getting a whole bunch of natural physiological births under our belt. And some people are ready to move on with that intuitive part way before they are with like that clinical, I know this data, I can recite this text kind of stage of knowledge. I felt like for me, that is how I learned, which was surprising because I'm a good student kind of person, kind of girl. And so for me to realize that my intuition was progressing me further than the book work was pretty, like, it was just eye-opening because I had never experienced that before.
Yeah, for sure. What would you say to, what do you think, what would you say to yourself is different in clinical practice now compared to like when you were starting or when you were a student? Like what is new or that you didn't expect, or that is more like prevalent in your practice than you would have ever imagined?
Oh yeah. It's so hard because I feel like it goes through like different waves of like what like seems to be happening in groups with our clients. But I think the biggest, well, I don't think anybody really teaches you the business side of any of these types of careers. Like even with my friends who are doulas, like, or other, like, I don't want to say it's heart-led work. I mean, it is, but it's still a business and we're still practicing. But that is the thing that I think is really missing that I've had to learn on the run, is how to actually, build a practice. Thankfully, I walked into an apprenticeship and partnership with an already existing business, so that kind of made it a little bit easier. But then to take that over and know how to do the business end and serve women and be like that good emotional support person and guide, but then to also like have that separate, like it's also a business.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest thing for some patients and clients to kind of grasp as well, is that there is a business aspect. And so, becoming comfortable with like knowing what my worth is and my practice's worth is. And I know that you and I have had many conversations about that, and just like being steadfast about like, we're worth, the charge for a home birth and during our prenatals, our labor birth, and our postpartum.
If you're a big enough practice, you can have a front desk lady for that. It's just like, I'll do the heart-centered stuff, talk to the front desk about that. Like, that's the luxury that I don't know that I could ever really step into either, because I do think It is. I mean, when you're midwife, you're stepping into, I have a therapist friend and she's like, she does marriage therapy and she's like, I'm in their bedrooms, I'm in their, marriages, I'm in their bank accounts, I'm in their, like, you're getting all the stuff. And it's midwives are the same thing. Like, we're getting all the
Yeah.
things. We're triggering their mother issues. We
Oh
are,
gosh.
we're, things are weeping, we're dealing with childhood trauma, and then we got to deal with money with them, like in terms of like making sure our practice is, fairly compensated and that contracts are
And
adhered
solve
to
it,
and things like
right?
that.
We
And it's
have
really
to be
hard.
solved.
It's really hard. And I would say it takes a special client, right? It takes special people to be able to match that, recognize that, see value in that, and also healthily operate with us in both realms
Yeah.
and honor agreements. And I would say, like, for me, the answer to that question would be, I really would have underestimated when I was younger how much emotional, like personal work, like I personally feel like I'm always having to do and check myself. And like it's an enormous amount of personal work when things are personal with clients and or
Yeah.
things get funny with
And I
clients.
mean, birth is very, very personal.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't think I understood that either until I started my own therapy with a counselor and then started working on myself. That's really changed a lot of who I am as a midwife, is working on my own issues, my own traumas. I don't want to say trigger because I think that word is way overused nowadays,
Yeah,
but the things that like
that's
kind
what
of
just
get me
popped in my head
going,
though. Yeah.
but there's some things that, I mean, we have to work on ourselves in order to be fully present for
Mm-hmm.
that mom.
But
I
yet,
also,
but yet we're not perfect and we're human beings, right? So there's this humanity. So we have to see the humanity in our clients, but they also need to see the humanity in us too. And it's hard because I think people really idealize their midwives and their midwives are supposed to be a certain way and you're supposed to be, or we're not enough of this. And I think that it's hard to we everyone has to remember we're all human
yeah,
and we have
yes,
and we have limitations.
yeah. And we have families that, need us at home as well.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
friends, that we're always trying to make sure we're nurturing those relationships as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is a very humanizing career. It's also, I feel like it's one of the more special careers out there.
Mm-hmm.
It is one of the things where, I mean, every time I'm at a birth and I see like that mom meet her baby for the first time, I mean, for years in my apprenticeship, I would tear up and I'd be like, okay, got to get that like under control. And now I'll kind of get a little bit choked up. I like try not to cry too much during a birth. But I think that moment like keeps a lot of us going because it is such an amazing time in space where,
Mm-hmm.
baby has just come, from the heavens or, whatever you want to believe. And this mom has just done this really hard work to bring her baby forth and to allow the birth to process the way it needs to. And when they see each other for the first time, like you can't be anything other than like awed and awestruck by it, right?
Yeah. I like that. I'm really drawn to the transition I think women go through in pregnancy and in birth. Like for me, that's what keeps me going is transformation. Um, their own transformation and journey can be so powerful and usually is. And whether it's their first birth or their first home birth, that's often very potent, is somebody's first home birth after a history of hospital birth. And maybe it resonates with me because that was my personal journey, but it's just like you can see oh my gosh, that was so much different. That was so much better. And that was so much more empowering. And you can see, and it's a privilege and a blessing to be on a walk with them, I think, when they're going through that.
Oh yeah, like sometimes you see that shift actually during your prenatals. Sometimes it's during labor, and then sometimes it doesn't even happen until like postpartum.
Yeah.
Of course, my cat's gonna walk across the table.
I didn't see it.
Thankfully. So, what would you say your core value, like as a midwife, is
Yeah.
now that you've been in practice?
Um, informed consent is always really, to me, the most important thing, because I actually think midwives can be as guilty as doctors in not giving informed consent on the other end of the spectrum, right? Whether it's like the ROGAM issue or newborn screening, like metabolic screening, like I
vaginal exams.
anything like
Yeah. Yeah.
GBS testing, like testing for GBS, like I'll get clients that have come, either from the medical model or from other practices, and I still feel like I need to go through informed consent. And I really appreciate when they're like, no one ever explained it to me that way before. And then they're choosing a totally different path for themselves that they did in their prior pregnancy. And it's on either end of the spectrum. Before they declined a bunch of stuff, but it was because they didn't really fully understand it. So then you explain it and they end up choosing it, or the vice versa. So to me, like, I don't attach to them having to do a certain thing, but I play devil's advocate. Even like if they want to accept something or they want to decline something, I'll be like, okay, well, the downside to missing this, or the downside to testing for this is blah blah blah. So either way they go, I'll kind of keep pressing to make sure they're really informed and this is what they want, that's the right thing for them. So I don't have an attachment to any of the decisions that they make. And so I think I do a really good job of that. Sometimes I think some clients, it can feel like information overload. Some women are like, just tell me what to do, and I don't ever want to do that. I'm like, no, you have to make these decisions for yourself and your baby. And but I really enjoy that process with them. And then I also really enjoy the functional medicine side, the functional healing, the functional nutrition, because I think that keeps a lot of women in care who would otherwise be completely risked out for blood pressure or gestational diabetes or whatever. I think that stuff is totally correctable most of the time if women are willing to deep dive. Not everyone's willing to deep dive.
Nope.
We'd rather like just risk out easier. And that's fine too. But I think women who really want to keep their eye on the prize and like focus on what they want and change their life metabolically, I think that I resonate really well with them.
Yeah. That's definitely one of the big core values that we've added into the practice this year as well. We've done a lot of research on that functional maternity care, which is so important and actually so intriguing. Like for me, like I never thought I'd be that really deep sciencey kind of person, but it is very intriguing. And I think it's very important for us to know like how we can best have our clients have the most optimal pregnancy, labor, birth, and postpartum. And so, we've added that stuff in as well. And our practice is very much based in informed consent. Once again, I think one of the reasons why we resonate with each other is we have these core values that are very similar. To me, like same with you, like give them all the information, give them all the pros, give them all the cons, give them risks and benefits, talk to them about, if you do decide this or you don't decide this, what could that look like? And really putting the responsibility back onto the parents to make an informed decision, like a true informed decision. I will support you no matter what, because and it's your baby, it's your body.
And that what you just said is put the responsibility on them. That's a journey for a lot of them that is new, because a lot of them are used to the indoctrination and the conveyor belt of modern medicine since they were small children. So that rewiring and that undoing is painful and hard for some people to really take that much ownership and responsibility and not be told what to do, that I really enjoy doing. But I do recognize that it's not for everybody. It's not, some people, it's not, it's like we can handhold, but we can't do the walk for them. So,
Exactly. And sometimes, it can be hard to have that discussion because, like you said, people aren't quite ready for it. So that is one of the things when we're doing like our meet and greets, people coming in to interview with us, we do like hone on that and talk about it and say, this practice, that's what we're kind of based in.
That's
we will give you information, because it's just, it might not be for everyone. And that's okay, but it's better knowing going in the initial part than, at the end when they're like, no, tell me, do I test for GBS? I'm like, no, you have to make that decision.
Well, I see it like, I don't know if you follow like some of the Facebook boards and groups, like there's the VBAC link. We have a big one in Utah that thousands of women are on called the Utah Birth Forum. And it's like, I have to have a certain bandwidth to kind of even like go in there, or it'll be on my newsreel. Cause I just see all these women that are like, I need to, or even women, there was somebody the other day, or a woman like in midwifery care somewhere, it was an anonymous poster, but she's like, I haven't been able to reach my midwife, or my midwife's not checking in on my baby to tell me it's okay. Like, and she's like, I'm going to go to the hospital. So she's kind of like, I'm going to go to the hospital to get my baby checked. And everyone's like hating on the midwife. And I'm just like, this is an example of a person that it might not be, or she needs some more hand holding. Like it might not be the best journey for her, because there is that, like, you know, in this age of Amazon where, you know, we've had, you know, we know in the last few years in the state of the world that the miscarriage rate in the first trimester has gone up like 30%, right? 30-40%.
Yeah.
It was astronomical what's happened. I think it's settled down. It seems like it's settled down on my end. But, you know, I tell women, like, in this age of Amazon where we order something and we can literally get it the same day, there are just some things in pregnancy, especially like in that first trimester or the first 20 weeks, where it's like, we just don't know. Like, we can't tell you today what your body's going to do. We can't tell you everything's going to be perfectly okay. We just got to kind of wait and see what your body does. And that is really hard, just culturally, especially with the younger generation that are like, now, I need to know right
Yeah.
now. You know, unwinding that and getting them to tune into their bodies and relax into things and drop the anxiety that I think everybody's getting from instantaneous social media and instant community and instant news. And I think we're getting out of our bodies a little bit, and we need other people to tell us it's going to be okay, right? So that, yeah,
women need to bring like that trust back into themselves.
Yes.
Really is what it is we need to know that our bodies know how to work, you know. We have to get our brains out of the way.
Yes, totally.
Mouths out of the way sometimes.
Yeah, and sometimes we can kind of take women on that walk and that journey of kind of like dropping some of the fear and anxiety and just tuning in, and we're going to implement the diagnostics when it's appropriate to, and like check in. And, you know, most of us have the tools for that. Are we 24/7 operators that we can just at 2 a.m. because you haven't felt your baby move while you were sleeping in 2 hours, like run over to your house with imaging? Like, it's probably, you know, not what we're going to do. So an ER trip is something, you know, appropriate for that woman. But, you know, in those cases, the decision becomes, can we continue on this journey, you know, or is there going to be a lot of spiraling going on? And this is not going to be, you know, an enjoyable process for the woman, because she's really belonging and feeling more comfortable back in the system. And, you know, and I think that's important to acknowledge. Everybody is in a different place in their journey with it all.
So with all of that being said, how do you think we as midwives can really impact or make that difference for women and families? Because as we know, our maternal mortality rate is horrendous. And, you know, it's just astronomical, like what it has become. You know, we have countries in Africa that do better than us with moms and babies. So what do you think midwives can do to maybe change that a little bit?
I mean, I think getting that statistic out there is really important, because when people say, wait a second, on the World WHO list of developed nations, we're ranked 25th out of 27 next to Afghanistan, like, most people aren't aware of that. Like, people like Joe Rogan need to hear that statistic before they poo-poo on home birth like he did in November, you know, like that's one thing. The other thing is, like, just more midwives in the community. There's a slipper for every foot. So, like, we tend to have a ripple effect in our own communities, making sure. And, you know, there's this push among midwives right now to, you know, maybe not have legislated midwives, not have licensed midwives. And I see value in that. I'm in a state where licensure is optional. Personally, I like holding a license, and I like all that, the opportunity that gives me and what I can offer women because of that, and the safety that some people place on that or feel on that who aren't quite ready to pre-birth or aren't quite ready to have a non-licensed midwife. You know, I think choice is always great. The more that I like the optional licensure, I don't like non-licensed midwives bad-mouthing licensed midwives. I think the infighting is not productive. And Robbie Davis Floyd is a sociologist that made her career off studying midwives. And, you know, when an oppressed group is oppressed, they attack each other instead of the oppressor, kind of thing. And I love that I'm in this state where we have these models for everybody. So for one woman who will feel really safe with me because I can at least speak to more of the medical stuff that they're used to, maybe with their prior hospital birth. So I'm like a good sort of feed in. Her next birth, she might be like, you know what, I want like to free birth, or I want somebody knitting in a corner who's not going to even talk to me about Dopplers or
Yeah.
ultrasounds or anything like that. That's great. Like, let's choose that, and let's have a situation in a state that's not going to put a midwife behind bars for offering that to women, because that is going on in states like New York,
Yes.
you know, where it is a felony. If my daughter lived in New York, you know, I'm practicing, licensed in 2 states, worked at 4 different birth centers across the country. If I had a daughter,
would not be able to serve
I'd
her.
I'd risk jail to deliver my grandchild. So like, I think that's wrong. And I think we need to work to be models like what Utah has going on, where everybody just, you know, it's a great, if I have breaches or twins that my license does not let me have. I had a persistent breach a month or 2 ago. I had all these different options laid out for this client. I was like, we can schedule you a C-section. We can do a vaginal birth in the hospital. We found a provider who, you're a good candidate for that. And guess what? We can do a home birth with a midwife, non-licensed, who does a ton of these and is an expert. These are your choices.
Yeah.
I'm not going to leave you hanging.
Those are a lot more choices than most women get too.
Totally. So, and nobody's going to go to jail, which is great. And you know what? That particular client chose scheduled C-section. She's like, I don't want to deal with the risk. And that's great. But a lot of my clients, I think choice and freedom to choose is great. But I don't think infighting, like across sectors of the non-licensed community, hating on the licensed community, that's not going to serve us, because there's a whole group of people we're appealing to that are not quite ready to step in, but their next birthday will be, you know? So,
well, and the thing is how many women are there in the United States that are going to be birthing? Like hundreds and thousands, you know, millions. So there's enough women to choose lots of different ways to birth their babies. So I really do feel like there's room for everyone. And we have to allow that to happen, because that's the only way that you're going to grow like midwifery, is, you know, being open to all the different options and choices.
For sure.
So we're at about 30 minutes. I can't believe it.
Thank you, you guys who hung in there, all 6 of you. That's great.
I know. So tell everyone who's watching and who's going to watch this replay, like, where they can go to learn more about your practice. I also know that you offer a educational course, so I want everyone to know about that. Yeah, so share.
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram at Segolily Midwife. I have a personal account there too, Shabby Ski, but that's more family and, you know, just life blogging. But business-wise, it's Segolily Midwife. And I did create an online course, and what inspired that is, after 12 years of consultations or initial visits with clients who had prior hospital birth, they are saying, I learned more from you in these 45 minutes than I did our entire pregnancy with an OB. And that was said over and over again, that I just bottled up what happens in a consultation and what happens in about 10 to 13 prenatal visits over the course of someone's care to prepare for birth, think about all the things that are coming immediate postpartum, prepare for the postpartum period. So it's not a childbirth ed class. It's actually a great class to get on board as soon as you're pregnant, because it's going to take you step by step, just like I do with women who are in my office. It's perfect for women seeing OBs who don't have access to midwives in their community. But the hope is that it gets you inspired to be like, wow, I didn't realize midwives talk about these things or do these things. And then you start looking in your own community to see who's out there and see if you can make a provider change, which is completely reasonable, whether you're 6 weeks or 36 weeks or 40 weeks. You can be a consumer and shop around, and you should be. So, you know, we do enough grief counseling with women in a prior birth drama. So this class is great. It's called Midwife Companion, and you can find it in any of the links in my social media.
Great. Thanks, Heather. I'm so happy we got to chat, and I know we'll be on the phone with each other.
We should do a podcast. This would be really fun.
I think we should. Yes, I think we should too. This is so much fun. So happy International Day of the Midwife to everyone out there who is serving women and families and babies. It really is the most gratifying and like just wonderful career that we could ever have. So thank you for doing your work out in Salt Lake City. And yeah, let's do a podcast.
That would be fun. That would be fun. All right, Jen,
everyone.
Take care.
Yep, take care. Enjoy your Friday. Everyone have a margarita, because it's also Cinco de Mayo.
I'm on
So
call. I can't.
I know, me too. Midwife life.
That's
All
right.
right.
See you later.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, everyone. I'm just going to get Heather on here.